Okay, this is the 5th video in the set of videos that we've got making a website from scratch. This is going to be the last video, and we're just going to go through and clean up some of the files a little bit more from the last video. I mean, the last video was great, and it was a big leap forward from part number 3, but we want to just finish this off, and we want to make it look really nice. And one of the key things we're going to talk about today are the layers. Now, to explain the layers, I've put a file together in Photoshop just to explain it a little bit better, just to show you how it works, okay? So you don't need to know Photoshop, you don't need to know any of that, it's more just this simple explanation, okay? So when we're looking at a website, let's say this big white box in the background, this is the website, okay? And then we've got lots of different elements on the website. So I've got an orange box here on the website, I've got a yellow box here on the website, I've got a green box here on the website, I've got lots of different elements. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to make sure that they're in the correct order. So on our website we have a picture of a Mercedes, okay? So we've got a picture, we've got our background image, which we could say that is our background, our white box, all right? So we could say that's our background image. Then on top of that we've got a transparent layer where we would like to have this transparent layer that moves up and down on the screen. And then on top of that again, we want to have some writing, and we'd like to have maybe a logo and maybe the Mercedes-Benz symbol, those sorts of things. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that each of these layers are in the correct position, right? So how do I know that the blue layer is going to be in front of the red layer, or the green layer is going to be in front of the blue layer but behind the yellow layer? So one of the ideas is, how do we work out which layer is in which position? And in our previous videos we've had the transparent layer, let's say this blue layer represents our transparent layer, we've had that in front of a lot of stuff, and it's made our text look like it's faded out, and it looks like this white box over the top of the background, and so it's kind of been getting in the way a little bit, this transparent layer. So the idea is, how do we move that back? How do we push that back down behind the other things where we want it to be behind there, right? So how do we do that? Now what they do in CSS, they have a thing called Zed Index. All right, so I'm just going to show you that when we go to here. Now, I'm back into brackets. I've got all the same files open that we've had in the last 4 or 5 videos. And what we're looking at, I'm looking at my CSS right now here. And here's my transparent background, okay? So if you followed along on the video, you'll know that this is a div, and inside the div I've given it a class, and the class is called backtran, and this represents the transparent background that's on our video, on our website on page 4, right? So I'm just going to preview that for you, and here you can see this is a good example of the layers I'm talking about. The car is the background layer, and then the writing has come in, and then we've got this transparent white layer in front of that. But we don't want that. We actually want the text to be in front of the transparent layer, right? So at the moment, the order is wrong. The layer order is incorrect. So we really need to change this layer order. And to do that, like I said, we use a thing called Zed Index, all right? So I want to go to this transparent layer here, and I want to give it a Zed Index. So I know there it is there. There's the div with the class back transparent. I want to move it back on the page, okay? So I'm going to go to Mayland, I'm going to go to my CSS here, and I am going to add a Zed Index in here, into my style sheets, and you can see brackets helps me bring it up, Zed Index, and I'm going to give it the value of 0, okay? So it's going to be the backmost thing apart from the background. Obviously the background is like the very back piece of paper, and then you're starting to stack things on top of it, okay? The bottom piece of paper, and you're stacking things on top of it. So here we are, I've given this a Z index of 0. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at how do we start giving these other things different values. So one of them is going to have a Z index of 1, a Z index of 2, Z index of 3, and as the number goes higher, that's closer to the front, right? The more you're going to see. So if I've given the background a Z index of, the transparency a Z index of 0, I need to make sure that all this writing is ahead of that and is in front of that. But there's another little problem here as well. At the moment, where we can look at our page here, everything is still sitting inside the body and then we've put individual divs in here, right? So we've got a div here for the buttons at the top. We've got a div here for the transparent background. We've got different headings here. We've got a div here for the paragraphs, but nothing is kind of holding it all. We don't really have that big container holding everything together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new div which is like a container, and then inside that container we're going to put all of the other information to sit inside. So it's going to be like having divs inside of divs, all right? So we're going to have one big container that holds everything, and then once everything's in the container, then we can give them all different Z indexes and make sure that they're all sitting in the right position inside the container that we have. Okay, so that's pretty easy. The first thing I'm going to do is just create a simple div right here, and I am going to give it the class, and I'm going to call that class container. Pretty easy, right? So, oops, a little bit of typo there, equals inverted commas container, right? So I've created a new div, and I've given it a class, and I've called it container. I'm going to close that div, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get the close of the div, and I'm going to put that down right down the very bottom down here. So what I've done is I've created a bigger box, all right? And I've left the buttons out, I've left the background of the page out, and I've left the buttons out. But inside this box below, now I've got my transparent backgrounds, I've got my headings, and I've got my paragraphs. And we can treat these things separately, all within the bounds of the container. Okay, so the container can sort of hold all of our information. So we know that when we get to our mainland, if we're going to have another class, we need to have a new container. So I'm just going to put a new, we need to have a new reference in CSS for the container. So I'm just going to put this container in here, and at the moment I'm just going to leave it blank, right? So here's the relationship. We have a new container in here, a new div, we've called it container, we've gone to our CSS and we've gone, okay, let's style some of our container in here, and that's going to hold all of our different layers inside of it, okay? Now, it's not going to have any, essentially any body itself to it. You're not going to be able to see anything. It's just going to be this container that holds everything all in the same place. All right, now I'm going to get back to that, but before I do that, there's a few other things I want to tweak, and then I'm going to go through and we're going to start playing with this container. Now, the first thing is the background. We have this blue background. Every time I drag my screen up and down, I get this blue background, which I really don't like. And I can scale it, and my picture's working and all that sort of stuff, but I just can't handle that blue background. I just really, really don't like it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to my style sheets here. I'm going to have a look at my blue background here, but the background is on the body of the whole document, and I don't really need that. I just need it in the background. And if you remember, when we did our index file, we said the body has a class called background. So at the moment, we've got some style sheets for body, and we've got some style sheets for BG. Now, we don't really need both. We don't need two sets of style sheets for the same area, okay? So when I go to here, I'm thinking body, that's kind of the same as background because the class background is part of the body, so I don't really need both of these together, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the text align, because now that we've created a new container down here that's going to hold all of our information inside that container, we can individually edit and tweak and change the text. And so in that case, in that situation, that's where we'll tell it where we want the text aligned. We don't need it to be aligned for the entire page, all right? So I'm taking that out of the body. Also, I'm going to move this background color because I don't really need that there anymore, and I'm going to put that into our background class, right? Because it's pointless having the same thing in there twice. Okay, so now we've got background image, that's the same. The position centered, no repeat, it's covering the whole thing. The background's blue, now we want to change that to black, all right? Because on the very first video I made, I previewed it, it was black in the background, and I like it better as black. Now, I don't want the image in the background to move at all, right? So I'm going to put one in here called background attachment, and I'm just going to make it fixed. And that way, if other things are scrolling up and down on the screen, I don't want the background to scroll at all. I want it to stay exactly where it is, fixed in position. So this is kind of like a double check just to make sure that it's correct. I'm also going to put a margin in of 0 pixels. So it can't move. I'm fixing it exactly where it is. And auto is kind of a way of saying auto adjust that to make sure that it's correct, right? So I do not want that background image moved. Okay, so now if we go and have a look at it, I just need to save that file. And now if we go and have a look at it, when we go to the page, we should have a black background. It should look exactly the same. Everything should be identical, except that the text will have moved over to the left-hand side, okay? So nothing else will have changed. None of the layer orders changed or any of that sort of stuff. I just wanted to tweak the background and fix up our CSS a little bit first before we start playing with the Zed Index. So here we go. I'll just do a quick refresh. And you can see, here's my picture, it still scales fully, my transparent background's still there. If I scroll down, I've actually got black, and you'll notice I can't scroll down as much now. It's a little bit sharper on the snapback. That's because I've played with that margin and added the fixed position for the background. So this looks good. I'm happy with this so far. The buttons are all rolling over. They're all staying in position, which is good. Now we've got to organize our Zed Index. Now, we talked about a container. So I went to here, Mainland 4, I made a container here, and I started my container here, container, and it closes there. And then I've got my headings in here. I've got my class inside, which is my transparent background, and I've got my div for text. So now we need to start tweaking these and changing their order. Now I already went into Backtran, and I went in and I changed the Zed index there to 0. So let's see how that works. Right, so we're going to go back here to index 4. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to think about this, this container that I've put in here that's going to hold all that information in there, and then we're going to play with our Z indexes. So I'm just going to put a style in here very quickly, and I'm just going to, I'm just going to give that style a height. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I'm saying, all right, here's the container that everything's going to be held in, but I want it to be a fixed height. I don't want the height to change too much. I don't want things to scroll outside of the height that I'm making. So I'm just going to give it a height of 1,200 pixels. I'm going to say, right, so my page has still got its normal page height, but I've created a specific container that has a height of 1,200 pixels, and then inside of that we're going to have different things on, essentially on different layers, okay? So we start off with our Backtran, which is our transparent one in here, and we've already done all of the style for that, so that one's perfect. The next thing is we need to look at the content. Now, we obviously don't need heading 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't need all of these headings, all right? So I'm just going to get that, and I'm just going to delete all of those off to start with, because we just don't need all of those headings on that page, right? So I'm just going to save that as well, so I've got rid of those. Now, we do have this paragraph of writing down here, but what do I actually want to put on the page? So I'm going to go back to my very original first video, and I'm going to show you what the actual final product looked like, and show you what I actually did want to have on the page, right? So if I go to here and I just open up, I think it's that one. Okay, so this is the original one that I said on video 1. This is what we're aiming at. So we've got a heading of Mercedes-Benz Mayland, Nicholas May Signature Edition. It's got my signature, and then it's got this logo of the Mercedes-Benz logo, right? So there are no headings, there are no paragraphs, there's nothing like that. There's just this with the sliding bar and the text in it. So that's what I'm going to aim to do right now. So I'm just going to close that. Go back to here. This is where we're at the moment. I've saved, so if I save and if I hit refresh, we've got rid of all those headings, and then there's that yellow writing at the top, which we really want to put the heading in. We want to put the Mercedes-Benz Mayland heading in there, okay? So let's look at how we do that, and remember, we're still kind of keeping in the back of our mind our Z index, all right? We're thinking about where that Z index is. So rather than delete this whole paragraph, let's make this paragraph the heading, and let's actually change it to say Mercedes-Benz Mayland, right? So I'm just going to highlight all of that. I'm just going to change it to say Benz Mayland. Okay, now obviously I want to have this styled. Okay, I do not want this to be just Mercedes-Benz Mayland with no style at all. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put in here a class, and I'm going to make that class equal to, let's just call it style 1. Right, so it can be my writing style 1. Again, we go straight back to our CSS, and we need to make sure that we're adding the class in here, style 1, with our 2 brackets, and we're going to put some styling inside of there. Also, we've come back to this here, and the container's there, and I haven't put any information into the container. So I actually want to set some ground rules for the container as well, the container that's holding everything together. I actually want to set some ground rules in here. Now, I've already done one of them. I've said the height is 1,200. So what I could probably do is delete that from there. I shouldn't have put that in there. That was a bit wrong. And I probably should put that back in here into my container here, because that's one of the things that I want to have all of my CSS done correctly in my my CSS page, right? So I had 1,200 pixels with a semicolon, enter. I might as well do the width as well. Okay, and I'm going to sit with maybe 1,000 pixels. That'll be good. The reason I'm choosing these numbers is I'm thinking about how high definition screens, how wide they are. 1024 pixels wide for a high def screen. Therefore, if I'm on 1,000, then my container's a little bit inside of the screen, all right? So that I'm not going to be losing words off to the edge of the screen. I'm just going to put the margin to 0. Same as I did with the background picture. I don't really want it moving around from where I'm setting it, so I'm just going to set it like that. So now I've set my container information up here. Now I've got to my style. So the style for the words Mercedes-Benz, how do I want them to style? I'm just going to tweak this as well, because I just like my style sheets to line up so they're easy to navigate and search through. Right, so style 1, I want the heading Mercedes-Benz, so let's go to a font family first. Font family, and I'm just going to choose Helvetica, I suppose. Oops, colon, Helvetica. Maybe Helvetica bold, because I want it to be a heading. So Helvetica bold, comma. If that doesn't load, or if the person doesn't have it, let's just have Helvetica. Helvetica is like the standard font that comes on a Mac. I think it's like Times or something like that on a PC. Sans serif. Okay, so I've put in a basic font for my heading for my style 1 there. Okay, now what size do I want it? Well, it's going to be a heading, right? So I want my font size to be a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to say font size. Okay, and I'm going to make my font 36 point. Okay, 36 pixels. All right, what else am I going to do? I'm going to do my font weight. Font weight, let's make it 700. You play with whatever you want for these font styles and heights and weights and all that sort of stuff. You can play with them to make it look like something that you want. I'm just sort of guessing at the moment, and then I'll tweak them later if they need to be changed, right? So word wrap, I'm going to put break word, right, which means if it has to wrap to the next line, it can actually break the word in half if it has to do that. It won't have to do. I'm not putting enough writing in. Right, so I've just gone through and I've made the container correct and I've made the text correct. We've gone through the actual page itself and we've put in the heading Mercedes-Benz Mayland and we've given it a style. So we should actually see if that works, right? So we should just have a quick look if that works. Save that. Go back to here, preview my page, I'm just hitting refresh, and there you go. You can see at the top Mercedes-Benz Mayland. It's still in bright orange writing, but we're going to tweak that again in a minute and make sure that all of that is correct. Okay, what else do we need to do? We want to talk about this Zed Index. I keep on starting it and then finishing it, so let's actually talk about that. Now, let's change this div here. Let's make this... if I've got my container here and I've got my back transparency here, let's make this the content, all right? So I'm going to give this a class and I'm going to call this content. Now, it's kind of important that when you're doing these, you give them meaningful names, because then when you give them meaningful names, you can always go back and you can always sort of understand, what am I looking at? Where have I found this? What does it mean to me? And all that sort of stuff. So I kind of make sure that I always give these things meaningful names, all right? And you know, content, that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? It's the content of what's going to be in this thing. Now, if we've made the class here, we need to go into the style and we need to make one called content. You guys can see what I'm doing, right? It's the same sort of process. Every time I create a new class, I go in and I style that class, all right? Okay, so now let's talk about what we're going to put into this content section just here. And this is where we want the magic to start happening, so we can see the different layers and see the Zed Index and all that sort of stuff. We kind of talked our way around it a lot, so let's actually have a look at it and get it going. So the first thing I want to do is I want to place this new content, which is going to be our heading, into the correct position, right? So I am going to, let's say I'm going to put it in a left position, so it comes off my left border, and I'm going to come out, I don't know, 20 pixels, right? So that's where my content's going to start. Now I'm going to come down from the top of the page, and I'm going to come down, say, let's say 500 pixels, right? Semicolon that. Right now, we want the position on the page to be relative to the scrolling of the person scrolling, right? So let's go position, and let's go relative. Okay, so we try and do that. Now, this is the magic one. Zed Index. We want the Zed Index to be at 1. All right, so that we know that we've put the transparent background at position 0. So we're putting the content ahead of that, so closer to the user. So we're putting that at Zed Index position 1. Now, let's just save that. And let's have a quick look at our index 4. So there's my content. I'm also going to add just one little section in here. I'm going to put a minimum height for the data, right? So data minimum height, and I'm going to make that to 1,000. So the box is going to stay, the content box is going to stay 1,000 pixels in size, whether it's got stuff in it or not. The box is still going to stay that size, so that it potentially can hold things. If I want to put more things into it, it'll never get smaller than that, right? So that's our data minimum height I've put in there, and I've gone through and I've put my style in for the content, and I've styled my writing on the inside. So now we should see Mercedes-Benz Mayland sitting in a pretty good position in front of the transparent box, and we should be okay. So let's just save that. Let's have a preview. Go over here. Let's update my preview. Okay, so here it is. We've got Mercedes-Benz Mayland down here. It's in off the page. It's in not a bad position. It's not lined up with the transparent box. And look, there's a couple of things we can see that are happening. My buttons are scrolling up the page, but the writing is not in the right spot. So let's go back to our style sheets. And we tweak our style sheet. So I put it from the top 500, maybe we put it 200 from the top, okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing is that those buttons are moving, and I don't want the buttons to move, so let's just go back and check my buttons. They're called head button, so let's just go back to my style sheets and check our head button, and instead of it being absolute, which means it's going to move with the mouse going up and down, let's make it fixed. Okay, so now the buttons should be in a fixed position regardless of what else happens on the screen. Save that, refresh that. Oops, let's just go here and refresh. Okay, so here's my buttons. They're not moving. Here's my heading. It's moving up and down, and you can see that the Mercedes-Benz Mayland is moving with it, right? Now, it's probably a little bit high, so I'll come down maybe 50 or 60 more pixels, maybe 100 pixels, and I'll try and get it down here, down the bottom or right in the middle. The other thing is orange, right? So we want to tweak that as well. So let's go back and have a look at why it's orange. We've got index here. Here's our style. It's in a paragraph. Now, maybe I don't want it in a paragraph. Maybe I should change that from paragraph to a div. Let's just have a look at our style sheets. It's in style 1, which is in a paragraph. Let's go back here. Now we've got style 1 there. Nothing says orange. There's no color in there. If we go up to the top, we've still got 3 sections here that we don't need. H1, we're not using anymore. We don't have any light green, so let's delete that. Paragraph, we've got as orange writing. Now we don't want that, right? So let's get rid of that. and just delete that, which will change my heading. And the other thing is image. We're not using any placed images anymore. That was from our very first web page we made, so let's delete that as well. So I'm just cleaning up the style sheet just a little bit there. Now let's go back down to style and let's put in color and make it black. Remember, it's US spelling for color. Black, semicolon, that's good. So we should be better now. Now we said that the content was a little bit high, so let's maybe make that 300 and see how that sits on the page. And the Z index is correct, right? So let's save that, preview it again, hit refresh. Now we're starting to get somewhere. We've got Mercedes-Benz Mayland that's moving up and down, and we've got it black, and it's in front of the transparency, and that was the big goal, right? You'll notice that the transparency is still going over the top of the buttons. That's okay, right? I don't mind if that happens because I can still get at the buttons here if I need to get at them, but that looks like it's pretty good. The other thing you'll notice is that the transparency is halfway down the page, right? So we might want to move that down a little bit, down to the bottom of the page, and then we can shoot it up and down. I also want to add a logo, and I want to add some little titles or something down here. So obviously what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new div for the titles here and a new div for the logo here, and they're going to be at a Z index of 1 or higher so that they're above the transparent background that's going to be moving up and down. I'm also going to move that transparent background down to the bottom, and then I can replace my titles and things above it, right? So we're nearly there. Okay, so here's my screen right now. We can see it scrolls down. I'm not happy that it's not all the way down the bottom, that transparency. So let's start fixing those things and adding these extra little bits, all right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to go to our style sheets, and we want to change this transparent background so it's down lower on the page, all right? In fact, if we have a quick look at our HTML page, remember the container is the thing that holds all of everything in it. The backtran is the transparent background, and then the content is the actual writing. So in this situation, we want to change the backtran. We want to move that transparent background down. So I'm going to go into here, and I'm going to go to backtran in my style sheets. It's at the moment, it's at 200. I'm going to move that down to say 500 and hope that's near the bottom of the page. So that should move the transparent box down. But I also want to move the content down that's inside of it. So I'm going to go into the content section here, and I could move that down to 500. Problem with that is that then the content is going to be exactly aligned with the top of the transparent box, which I don't want that, so I'm going to change that to 530, so it's 30 pixels further down from the actual transparent box. So if you hit save on that, go back to my HTML, and let's preview that. And hopefully, there's my transparent box. It's at the bottom of the page with the heading in a nice position. It scrolls all the way up, all the way down. That's what we've been looking for. And the writing is in front of the other stuff. Now, we want to add a little bit more writing in here, okay? So let's put in another paragraph before the close of the div, because it's still content that we're going to be adding. So let's just copy that exactly, Command C, paste it in here underneath it. We're going to call it style 2, and we're going to write some different kind of writing in here. Let's put, I think on the other one I had signature edition or something like that. So let's put Nicholas May signature edition. Let's do that. My signature URE edition. Edition. Right, it still spells it wrong. Right, so signature edition. So now we've got a style 2 here, so we need to make sure that we go to our CSS and we need to put a style 2 in here. Now I'm just actually going to just copy the whole of style 1, and I'm going to just repeat it down here, paste it down here. So this is where you sort of get a little bit lazy and you work quickly, but it works. It works to do this. Okay, so for style 2, I'm going to leave, I don't need it to be bold, I just want it to be a little bit less. I'll take out the Helvetica bold and just put Helvetica. Right, I want the font size to be much smaller because this is kind of a subheading. So let's make this 14 points, and let's make my font weight, let's just take the font weight out. We don't really need that. We don't need it to be a thick black font, right? Take that out. We can leave the color being black, hit S, go to our HTML page, hit S on that. So we've got a new paragraph with style 2, Nicholas May signature edition. Place-wise, it should be placed directly underneath this because it's in the content. Let's have a look. Okay, and there it is, right? So now we've got Mercedes-Benz Mayland, Nicholas May Signature Edition. So that's starting to look like our final product. Now we want to add the logo in here and the signature down the bottom. And in fact, I'm going to make both of them hyperlinks so that when you click on those, they jump to other pages. And then we'll compare it against our first page that we originally had. Okay, so let's finish it up. The last couple of things we want to do here is we want to put my signature in here and we want to put a Mercedes-Benz logo in here and we want to make them a hyperlink, all right? Now, much the same that we've just put into the content section here, we've put a new paragraph in and we've put some writing into here. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to put 2 new divs in within that content section because that's the content of the actual page, and we're going to add the 2 sections as images. Now, before I go ahead and do that and show you the divs and how I write it up and all that sort of stuff, we need to get what we're actually going to put on the page. So I went on the internet and I found this logo, and it is a PNG logo. Now, PNG is just a file format, but what it means when you normally have a PNG logo, it has a transparent background. And in fact, if you open this up in Photoshop, I've just got Photoshop open here. If you open this up in Photoshop, you'll see the little grey and white squares in the background, and that means it has a transparent background. Now, if you're using a JPEG or something else, it doesn't normally have a transparent background, it'll have a white background, okay? So when you're looking for a logo or whether you're making your own logo, you need to make sure that it's got a transparent background, okay? And that there's no white in the background. So that's the first thing. Second thing I got is my signature, okay? So I've got a tablet, so what I did is I just wrote my signature on the tablet straight into the computer. Now what you could do is you could sign a piece of paper, sign a piece of white paper, take a photograph of it, a digital photograph of it on your phone, put it into your computer, and then go into Photoshop and take the background out so that you've got only your signature left over. And again, I've saved it as a PNG file, so it's got the transparent background and it's just a signature. It's not my real signature, it's just one that we'll use for the website, right? Right, so we're going to create a new div and we're going to place the logo inside of the div, and that's all still within the bounds of the container, right? Now, so we can just see here that the start of that div is there and it says container. There's our transparent background, there's our writing so far that we've put in, and then there's the close of the div here. In fact, there's a couple of breaks in here that we could delete those breaks. Now, what we don't want to do is put the logo in the same section, the same div that the headings are in, right? So we want to just actually move this up, close that div there, that first one there. So that's closed the content div there, and we're going to make a new one, right? So let's just do a div here. So this is kind of a second thing. So the content is the writing, the div is kind of, this div is the logo section here, okay? So we're going to start off, and we will, we might as well give this a class, and we're going to call this class logo. Class is logo. Okay, so we're going to call that div, we're going to give that a class and we're going to call it logo. Then we are going to put in an anchor point to anchor an href. So an href is a hyperlink. Essentially, it's a hyperlink, right? Now, we talked about this earlier in our other videos about what a hyperlink is. So there's a hyperlink in here, and we're going to hyperlink to the actual Mercedes-Benz website, right? So let's go https://mercedes-benz.com. Close the inverted commas. We've done that. So that's going to link us from an anchor point to the Mercedes-Benz website. But we don't want the anchor to close there. So the anchor's closed here at the moment. We still want to put some things in between that so that the link is actually part of the image itself, okay? So let's put in the div for the actual image. So I'm just going to put here, div. And we do what we normally do. I'm just going to join these closes all up together because they can all close together, right? They don't need to be gapped in between. Right, in here we're going to put our image, which is IMG. If you go back to the first the very first one of the videos, you should be able to remember how to put an image in. I called it logo with a capital L.png. That's found it because it was in the folder, right? So logo.png, and I think that'll about do. We could put the height and width in there, but we could put that into our class logo. So we might put that into the class logo. So now we want to close the IMG, which is right there, and then we've got our div closed and our anchor closed and our div closed again, right? So that should be right for the logo. There's a few little things that we just might need to tweak, but let's just leave it like that at the moment. Let's go into the Mayland section here and put in our class that we just designed, which was logo. In here, bang, bang, move that over. Okay, so what do we want to do for the logo? What we want to do is we want to make sure that it's positioned in the right position. So we want it on the right hand side of the screen. Now you could either go right and then come off the right hand side of the page, or you can move from the left and go left across the screen, right? So most people actually go left because they know that their starting position is 0 on the left hand side of the screen. So I'm going to come across 800 pixels from the left hand side of the screen. I'm going to come down from the top. Let's come down 400. These things obviously can be changed, right? The numbers are they're just a guess, right? Let's make the width of the image 150, say, and then in which case we want it to be proportioned, so we want the height to also be 150. Oops. Okay, so they're about right. And then, now this is where we're going to play with the Zed Index again. We want the Zed Index to be closer to the front than obviously the transparent background, but also closer than the heading, because you want this to be a hyperlink. So if you click it, you want it to actually be in front of there. So we're going to make the Z index here too, so it's a little bit closer. And then the position, we don't want the position to change. We want it to be absolute, so it stays in exactly the same position that we've just given all the specifications for. So that's going to be there. So that looks pretty good, right? So there's my logo CSS. And if I go back to here, that's in the class of logo, so that should all work. Let's have a quick look at this. Go back and preview it. Okay, so there's my logo now. So obviously I put it 400. Remember we had the box started at 500, right? So this is where you need to just tweak things a little bit. So I should probably put it at 500. In fact, maybe I'll put it at 530, which is the same height that the text was going to start at before, right? So let's refresh. And there we go. So now the logo's in the right place. And in fact, we could move the logo further off over to the right over here. I think it's too centered on the screen. So maybe we change that 800 to maybe 900 or 875, say. Well, let's have a look. Save that. Refresh this. Yeah, it's still, for me, it's still too far to the right. Okay, too far to the, not far enough to the right. So let's go 950, say. And this is just trial and error, right? You just keep trial and error until you're happy with where it's at. That's okay, you know, like if I scale my screen in, it's okay, you know. See how the position's absolute? So that means even though the title is moving and the heading might move up and down here, the position of the logo is absolute, right? So I don't know whether you want that or you don't want that. That's sort of, you know, if you want it to scale, you could change it from absolute to relative, right? So let's have a look at when it's relative. Refresh this page. Okay, so now, see the logo, I mean, that could be better. We just would then need to replace this, all right? So let's go and change these again. Let's change it back to, say, 800, maybe change this back to 400. Save that. Let's have a look here. Refresh. So the logo is in a better position. If we scroll up and down, yeah, it still needs to come down a little bit. So let's make it 450, and let's make it. Let's leave it at 800. Let's have a look here. Refresh. Yeah, so that's better, right? So now the logo's in the right position. It goes with the screen. It moves like this. I'd like it up equal with that writing, actually. So I am going to just tweak it one more time. Let's just make it 420. and see if we can get it closer to where it would be. That's better, right? So then that's pretty good. So now we've got the heading at the front. We've got this. This should be a hyperlink. So if you see, as my mouse goes over it, it changes to a hyperlink. So if I click on that, it should jump me to the Mercedes-Benz website, which it does, which is fantastic. I'm glad about that. That's probably where I got the logo from. So that's good. I'm really happy that that's working and the hyperlink's working. And you can see I've put all of the styles in my style sheet and my index. I've just got this new div in here. Now, I also want to put my signature in. So I want to put my signature in here, and I pretty much want to do exactly the same as that, okay? So I'm going to copy this, Command C. I'm going to just put the new div in here, Command V. Now, I do want to change a few things. I want to change the class to signature. Just called sig sign. I want to change the hyperlink, and the hyperlink I'm going to use is actually my YouTube channel. So if I go to YouTube, okay, in fact that could be my YouTube right there. There it is, right? So there's my YouTube, the link to my YouTube channel. So I'm going to copy that. All right, and so in here, the href, I'm actually going to make the link to my YouTube channel. So if anyone clicks on there, they're going to go to my YouTube, which is fantastic. We want the image to change to, it was called My Signature Trans. Copy that, put that in here. Okay, so now I should have a hyperlinked document that comes in with the class of sign that will hyperlink to my YouTube channel. It's called My Signature Trans. Now, obviously, I need to copy this logo section here, Command C, and then I want to go down, Command V, paste that there. I'm going to change this one to sign. Okay, so it's my signature, and I want to change the position of this, all right? So the position's pretty important here. I don't want it to be on top of the logo that was already there. So from the left-hand side, I might come across 300 or 200. From the top, I could come down 500. So I want it to be under the heading. We don't. Oh yeah, let's leave the width and the height. Let's leave that, and let's put the Zed Index to position 3, so it's even closer to the front. And then we can go through and we can preview and see how it looks, right? So as you can see, a lot of this is trial and error. Okay, so the signature now, look at it, it's way down low here, right? So it's too far down, and it looks like it's too far to the left. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go back to my style sheets, and my signature, I'm just going to say 400 from the top, and I want it to be a little bit further out to the right, so maybe I'll make that 250, save that, go back, refresh. Okay, you can see it's moved up a little bit. I need it up maybe the same amount again, so let's make it 300 from the top. Save that. Position, yeah, it's not too bad. Now it's too high. You know, this is all where it's trial and error, right? So 350, save, refresh. Right, so now I like where my logo is, okay? So it moves up and down. My logo's here, my signature's here. Nicholas May Signature Edition's got my signature. Nicholas May Mayland, it all works perfectly. If I click on it, it takes me to my YouTube channel, right, which will then link, and you can see the other parts of the videos are in there. So that's good. I'm pretty happy with that. So that's it. We're done. We've finished the website. It all looks great. It does everything that we've promised from the start. In fact, let's compare it to the original one. If I can find the original one, file, open recent. Let's have a look. That one, I think that was the original one. Okay, so here's the original one we talked about right at the start, and you can see everything's nearly the same. The rollovers are black instead of being white. I think we've got them at white at the moment. So apart from that, it looks really, I'm really happy with it, and I think you guys should be happy that we've achieved what we aimed at. So this is our final product here. You can see they got white instead of green. The other thing that I should just mention is, because we went into the Mayland CSS here, and I deleted some stuff up the top here. I deleted the paragraph, and we changed body, and we changed a few things. This CSS is related to this last page and to our final page, but it will have tweaked and changed some of the other pages. If we go and preview them, they might not sit the way that we talked about in the earlier videos, right? But it's a progression where we've been working up to this final page, so that's where we're at. This is our final section. This is the page that you may present to the world. You could change your headings, but I think it's a really good start for what everyone's been asking for. So that's it. I don't know, what do people say? Click subscribe, click a like if you liked the video, if it was any good to you. If you've got friends who are building websites, maybe something in here could help them. The website, and actually my channel, is designed for helping students. I'm a teacher, so that's what it's there for. So if you've got any questions, send them to me, and good luck.